But 1 Peter chapter 5, a small little book, Peter writes this starting in verse 7. He says, "Cast all of your anxiety on him," that is Christ, "because he cares for you. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings." See, there are some church Christian traditions that talk about the devil a lot. Satan gets the credit for whatever bad thing happens. You know, you stub your toe and you're like, "Not today, Satan." You lose your wallet, or you can't find the parking space, or I've even been guilty of this one. The sound system's not working on Sunday morning. Satan is in the sound system. It's just not working. Maybe you grew up in a tradition like that. However, I kind of grew up, and I think there's in much of Western Christianity today, we have kind of swung to the other extreme. I think, sometimes fail to remember that there is, in fact, a very real enemy with real forces, real strategies to oppose and to attack God's people. The Christian life is often described as a journey, but I believe the context is a battle. And this is our third message in this digital fast series. I've read a lot of books, listened to a lot of content, had dozens of conversations with people, and while not being intentional, while I have been studying, I keep finding myself continually persuaded to talk about how we relate technology and our devices in this context of spiritual warfare. A few weeks ago, we started this series with a sermon titled "The Price of Your Device," looking at John chapter 10, verse 10. We saw how the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. The following week, we talked about the original moment in the Garden of Eden where the serpent tempted Adam and Eve with this promise to be like God, that we can, in our devices, can fool us into believing we can be all present and all powerful and all knowing because we have this little box on our sides or in our purses. But today I want to look here at this passage in 1 Peter among just another passage that speaks about the playbook of the enemy. 3 times in this tiny little letter of 1 Peter, the Apostle Peter says, "Be alert and of sober mind." And when he's talking about that, he's saying alert means to be fully awake, to pay attention, to be watching. To watching what, though? Well, he says in verse 8, the enemy, the devil, is what? Prowling around looking for someone to devour. I love that word picture. Like, you can all just, most of us, our context is, the lion in the zoo, and it's really tame, and he's just kind of wandering around, I doubt that's what it's like actually out on the open range. I wouldn't want to meet a lion in life. But that's the picture of what Satan is doing. Paul even echoes this thought in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, and the last half of 10 and following. He says, "I have forgiven in the sight of Christ's sake, in order that Satan might not outwit us, for we are not unaware of his schemes." You see, Satan has a plan to destroy our lives. There's a battle going on for your soul. And so I think it begs the question, are you aware of Satan's schemes? Don't be outwitted by the devil. I came across this meme this week. To give a little context real quick, how many have ever read C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters? Okay. Anybody know the Screwtape Letters? Okay. Well, in 1942, C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite authors, but C.S. Lewis published the Screwtape Letters. It's a fictional satire. The plot is there's this senior demon named Screwtape. And Screwtape is training his younger nephew, a fellow demon by the name of Wormwood. And Screwtape is teaching him all these kinds of techniques to tempt and distract a Christian called the patient. And that's kind of what the book is about. All these different strategies that play out in a way that this older demon is teaching the younger demon how to tempt this particular Christian so that the story in mind, this is the meme that I ran across this week. It says, "Dear Wormwood, disregard everything that I have written in my previous letters. Just get your patient to download TikTok and it'll do all the work for you. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape." Peter says, be alert and of sober mind. Why? Your enemy has a plan to exploit your unique weaknesses, your vulnerabilities, your blind spots. The enemy wants to take you out. But instead of being alert, being on guard, instead of engaging in spiritual warfare, we now have millions of people who have their minds distracted. Their attention has been ambushed, and they're simply numbing out in the death scroll on social media. And it may feel like that I've talked about this a lot. That's kind of the point of the series. But devices and technologies have seeped their way into our lives, and they have become almost an extension of our anatomy. And now I know some of you have been ignoring me this whole series because you don't struggle with this, okay? Thank God that you don't. And I mean that with all sincerity. Because here's the thing. Technology is amazing. I love technology. I love having the latest, newest tech because it's incredibly helpful, but when kept in its proper place. We are not saying, and I can't say this enough, I'm not trying to make you Amish in this part and get rid of all technology, okay? I want to share it. We are simply sharpening our awareness of the devil's schemes. And if you don't struggle with this, again, hear me out. Even if you do not struggle with this, I can guarantee that your children, and especially your grandchildren, do. They are looking to you for help. And if all we do is ignore what is happening to them and what technology is doing to our children and our grandchildren, you are just simply throwing them to the devil with nothing to defend themselves with. It's that serious, I think. If we are not aware of this, you may not struggle with this, but be aware that our children, and for those of you with grandchildren, are. Okay? I want to frame that. So may I implore you, please don't tune me out. Now, I probably should say, if this is the first time that you've been with us, this is a very unusual sermon. Like, this is not a normal sermon series that we do. And in fact, we as a whole church coming together to focus on and talk about our relationship with our digital devices, mainly our smartphones, these alluring, powerful computers that are in our pockets. This is just not something we normally talk about. But the reality is, this is Americans, I love this graphic, is Americans' cell phone usage. And this is according to the 2017, I believe is review. But some of these things, Americans check their phones within the first 10 minutes of waking up. 89% of Americans, we look at our phones within 10 minutes of opening our eyeballs. 75% of Americans are uneasy leaving their phones at home. 75% again check their phones within 5 minutes receiving a notification. 75% use their phone on the toilet. Okay, you know who you are. 69% say of Americans have texted someone in the same room that they are in. Okay, I did it Saturday. Okay, so I have to fall in that 69%. 60% sleep with their phone at night. 57% consider themselves addicted to their phones. 55% of Americans say they've never gone longer than 24 hours without their phone. 47% feel a sense of panic or anxiety when their cell phone battery goes below 20%. 46%, this one blew my mind. 46% of Americans look at or use their phone during dates. And the last one, 27% use their phone while driving. It's only 27% who are honest. Because it's more than that. We live in a pandemic where we are controlled by a little box. And what's crazy to me is you look at, organizations like the American Psychological Association does a Stress in America report every year. And nearly 2/3 of American adults agree that periodically unplugging or taking a break from their phone would be good for their mental health. Okay? 2/3 of Americans go, oh yeah, I should get rid of my phone. Less than a quarter actually do. But we have. Hey, we're a part of that quarter, for those of you who are participating. So today is day 21 of the 40-day fast. You've made it halfway through. If you're participating in this with us, we're almost there. Many of us, as I've had conversations with you, are intentionally changing our habits as we relate to digital devices. Maybe you're not cutting out as much as others. This looks different for different people and how we use it for school or for work. Everyone has done this a little bit differently, but what I have loved is that there is conversation and awareness to modify our use of technology. Now, some of you, like myself, we've made our smartphones dumb. There's nothing on there except what is necessary for utility. Anything that can be done on a computer is not on the phone. I've done that. My phone is 95% of the time on Do Not Disturb. I don't get any notifications throughout the day. We've been thinking of apps in regard to distraction versus utility. So for those of you who have been doing this, how's it going? It's going. That's good. Hey, that's all you can ask for. It's going. All right? I'm experiencing this real time with you. All right? This is actually the first time my tablet has been on in this entire fast. It's kind of crazy because I haven't preached. So it's been shut off. And I've been in Jamaica and I left it all at home. But as I've kind of looked over my experience here in the last 21 days, and as we look ahead to the last 19 days, there's kind of 4 movements that I think those of us who have done this have kind of progressed through. It's been this idea of detaching, discovering, delight, and determining. That first week or so was detaching, okay? Detaching from social media, detaching from games. I don't know how many times it's like that first week, because I would play games on my tablet. I didn't do that. And it was like, go to grab it. I'm like, nope, we're not doing it today. Like, the big one for me actually was email on my phone, okay? I noticed I have low-grade anxiety over the overwhelming need to check my inbox at least 25 times a day. And then I went to Jamaica and had no cell phone reception. And I found out I actually don't need to check my email all that much. When I had Wi-Fi, I was like, oh, hey, maybe once a day you'll clear out the junk mail, and nobody needed me. I mean, most everybody knew I was unreachable, but the idea was there, which leads to this second area of discovery. To my surprise, it turns out I don't need to know what everyone else is doing. It's a wonderful feeling. I don't care. There's lots of interesting and lots of uninteresting things that are going around in our world, in our country, in our community. I don't know about them. And that's okay. Because what I have discovered in the 21 days of doing this, I am more focused. My attention span is more sustained. I've been more creative. But these themes of detachment, discovery are now given way to conscious moments of delight. As the lady shared in the video, as we were able to participate in amazing things last week. Part of what made it so great is I left everything, my tablet, my computer, everything but my phone, because I needed to actually scan my airport, our boarding passes with my phone. I left it home. I intentionally unplugged, and it was delightful to just build relationships, to sit and talk with the kids, with teachers, the other folks that came on the trip with us. And just that relational equity that was built in 8 short days was amazing. So we have 19 days left. You can still join us. If maybe you've been like the holdout on the back end, you can still finish this out with us. Or for those of you who are doing it, there's only 19 days left. We're over the halfway point. But just like we started, I want to provide some guidance as we come to the end of this thing. I want to help determine what we're going to do differently as a result of being off screen. And so I want to provide guidance of coming off of this, just like we did when we first started, when I was intentionally trying to persuade you to join us on this thing. But now that we're engaged in it, I want to provide the guidance, a little bit of thinking of what this looks like as we move into this next phase. We kind of been taking this idea of Marie Kondoing our digital world. Like Marie Kondo, she empties out a whole closet, and you only bring back that which sparks joy. That's kind of the idea we want to focus around. The many people I've talked to are not planning to or bringing it all back. Everyone who has taken this seriously, everyone I've spoken to, at least, even teenagers, have told me they have had a positive experience with this. One of the interesting conversations that has come up that I found was really interesting with this is when to give your child a phone. There's still many of us in this room that hasn't happened yet. We still have littles. And what's been cool is like, okay, when is the right time to give our kids a phone? And what's been the thinking around this? There was a recent survey found that 42% of U.S. kids have a phone by the age of 10. By the age of 14, smartphone ownership jumps to 91%. And so if you have younger grandchildren in your home, I know that you don't have devices maybe yet, but let me give you a bit of advice. Don't start with a smartphone, start with a dumb phone. I know many parents want to know where their kids is. They want to be able to get a hold of them or whatever it may be. But let me encourage you, start your kids out with a simple watch phone or a light phone or a flip phone. They still actually do make those. Something that's not going to be so intoxicating to our kids and so wide open to the world around us. We as adults have a hard time with addiction with these devices, and we just like openly entrust them with our kids. I know none of you do, but many do. But something that we've been discussing, I've been in conversations with Mr. Moody and Mrs. Anderson at the school, is this initiative around what's called Wait Till 8th. And there's more information in the back. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but Wait Until 8th is a grassroots kind of initiative to help parents rally beside one another to delay the smartphone. And we're not saying no phone, just not the one that has full access to the world. Several years ago, I was reading this book, The Men We Need. There's a quote in this book that has forever shaped my thinking around smartphones and our kids. And the author, Brent Hansen, says this. He's talking to men, obviously, in this book. He says, "It is rare that your kid will actually ask you to shelter them, but they still want it. They'll rarely say, 'Don't let me watch this,' or 'Don't let me have that,' especially when other kids get to watch this or have that. But they're not the dad, you are. You have to make some tough calls, like whether your kid gets a smartphone. The default answer is, of course. But given the troubling connection of smartphones and the spike of teen depression and suicide, the default answer is tragic." And here's the thing that stuck out to me. A very wise counselor friend of mine put it another way. After observing his own kids and the young people he works with in his practice, he said the correct answer to the question, "When should I give my child a smartphone?" And this is this counselor's response: "When you want their childhood to end." Your kid gets one childhood and they get one dad for you, and you ought to protect it. That blew my mind. When should your child get a smartphone? When you want their childhood to end. That's the weight of what we're talking about here. There are amazing apps and programs out there that limit digital consumption. If you're curious more about those, you can ask me. I'd love to share those resources with you. Like I said, I've spent tons of time diving into this around this series. So if you've taken this digital media fast seriously, you're in a unique moment. You've decided to yourself to limit your distraction from your disciple. But as Peter says, be alert and of sober mind. As we come out of this 40-day experience, as we near the end of the digital media fast, I want to consider your digital rule of life. That's a term that I first heard from John Mark Comer, who's an author and a pastor. You may be familiar with the practice or the series of life rhythms known as a rule of life. The rule of life is actually just a practice that comes from monastic tradition from the 2nd and 3rd centuries. I mean, it's been around forever. Probably the most well-known rule of life it was written by Benedict in the 6th century. The Benedictine monks still use his rule of life. The rule of life is simply just a framework for your life. It's a schedule. It's a set of rhythms that creates space for us to receive and to give love. The truth is that whether you have named it or not, every follower of Jesus, really, actually, honestly, every human rarely or really has a well-established pattern of living. Whether it's intentionally developed, it's a set of commitments, or it's an unstated just set of values and practices. We all have a rule of life. It's whether you want to admit it or not, it's there. You prioritize certain things. You won't do this thing. You have some kind of bedtime routine. You eat a certain way. You prioritize certain spiritual practices. A rule of life is simply about having a higher degree of intentionality to how you live your life. So as we prepare to move out of this digital fast, I want to think about this digital rule of life. What are going to be your rules? What are your practices as your family, as you re-engage with technology? And so we need digital technology. We need devices to participate in our modern world. But how are you going to do it so that we use our devices instead of our devices using us? And this is an invitation. Of course, you can, like this whole process, you don't have to do it. But the plan for the week ahead is to come up with a digital rule of life. And I challenge you to write it out. And here are some questions, trying to just be practical for you to consider as you start with like healthy phone routines. Just ask these questions. What is the primary purpose of my phone? Where will I charge my phone? When will I look at it first thing in the morning? What time do I put it away at night? Where do I keep my phone when I'm at home, when I'm at work, when I'm at meal times? In what situations do I don't use my phone? Or maybe even what apps are most unhealthy for me? And I think there's also some community considerations. And something that I think Jamaica really helped in my life was, where do I have my phone and how and well will I interact with it? When I'm around people I love, my family and whatnot, when I'm on a date, am I just sitting there with this device sitting on the phone so that every time it blinks and lights up and we're not paying attention to the person we're with? When we're spending time with people, we're eating, we're watching TV, it amazes me, you know who you are. You have the TV on, the tablet in your lap, and your phone in your hand. It happens. Or driving. We all know that we're not supposed to, but let's be honest, we do. Or in class, or in meetings. So I just want to encourage us to create and think about a digital rule of life. Whether you did the fast or not, how are you helping your family to set a rhythm for how we use technology so that it works to our advantage, not allowing the devil to use it to his advantage? So recreating a reoccurring schedule on your phone to power down, put it away. Again, turn notifications off. It's amazing. Chantel was making fun of you. You didn't answer my text. I'm like, well, that's because my phone doesn't ring anymore. I try to check it every half hour or so that I know I don't miss things. Or so. I was working yesterday. But it's amazing how much calmer it has been in our house when there's not a ding happening all the time. Taking a weekly Sabbath away, having no device areas, all the different ways to just put this into perspective. I think that the key of this, and I want to kind of bring this back to 2 Peter, verse 9 closes out with this thought. It says to resist him, speaking again still of the devil, resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of suffering. We are not in this alone. That's why I wanted to do this digital fast as a church family. We're doing it together. We're working together because I firmly believe, and the reason we do this is because the world is watching. If we are just as anxious, if we are just as many issues as the world, what is the hope we proclaim to profess? We have a better answer. His name is Jesus Christ. And I think that starts with us being the example for the world around us. How are we allowing the devil to dictate our life through our devices? Again, the context of the Christian life is a battle. It's spiritual warfare. It's a war for your attention. It's a war for our children. It's a war for our soul. We need to be a family of believers around the world to be wide awake, alert, sober-minded, that we might resist the enemy. We stand firm in our faith. So craft a digital rule this week. Keep the conversation going. I don't want to just kind of come to the end of this and we just kind of go back to life how it has always been because it's easy and comfortable. Let's keep the conversation going forward. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for your word. Lord, I just pray that we would bear in mind that there is very real a spiritual war over our soul. And Lord, so I just pray that we would be alert, we would be of sober mind, that we would pay attention to the influences that are happening in our life, whether those be relational influence, whether it be the device influence, what those influences do something to us. And so, Lord, I just pray that we would be mindful, that we'd be alert, that we would look to you, the example of Jesus Christ, and how to live life to the fullest. And so, Lord, we just pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.